Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Thank you, Abdul Qadir, and many thanks to the 4 participants in the first and second sessions. Now we'll proceed with the third and last panel that's reserved to exchange on the need to enhance the media's potential for women empowerment in the audiovisual sector, identifying barriers and proposing recommendations. So I remind you to use the UfM and Konrad Adenauer Stiftung social networks to send us your questions, reactions, comments, and of course use the hashtag Women for Mediterranean. So once again, I wish to remind you to keep the time limit because we will try to finish on 11:30 sharp as European time. And so the time limit for each participant is going to be, so your contributions will have to be brief. So I'd like to welcome 2 young and enthusiastic women coming from the Balkans and from the Middle East. The first one is the Jordanian journalist and TV presenter, Mrs. Shahad Dibaja. And the second one is Mrs. Francesca Muccio, Secretary General of the Young Professionals Network, and she's also member of the governing board of FRICO. She is known as an influencer, young women, and she comes from Albania. I remind you to use the technical options to choose your preferred language and follow up us in Arabic, English, French, or in the universal language sign. So the session will be a mix between Arabic and English. So Francesca will be speaking in English and Shahad has chosen to speak in Arabic. So سؤالي الأول يوجه للإعلامية شهد ديباجة.
My first question to the journalist Shahad Dibaja, in order to guarantee a balance in the audio-visual sector, of course, we require more participation by the youth and women and advocacy to more interest in this profession. What are the social and cultural barriers that female young activists face in the audiovisual sector? The floor is yours. Thank you very much, Amal, and you're most welcome. I am pleased to take part in this valuable forum. At the outset, while I want to speak about barriers that might face the youth and women in our communities in general, let me highlight a couple of challenges. Women face challenges in all fields, in the political field, and the media field, and in the leadership field as well. Now, when it comes to the political sphere, lately in the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, we had parliamentary elections, and according to studies, we had 360 female candidates. Unfortunately, 43% of the 360 female candidates who had taken such a decision have been faced with tremendous violence through the e-bullying that they've been exposed to because of their appearances and representations. I think that it's a gender-based type of violence. So a lot of challenges are faced. Now let me move to the media sector in the rural areas and in the governorates. You don't find media institutions. You only find them in the cities and the big cities. And if women have a job in the media sector, the social customs and traditions do not allow women to move from rural areas to the capital on a daily basis. They cannot easily compute. They're faced with too much pressure by the family and the neighborhood if women would like to get such a job. And even from an educational perspective, women are faced with many challenges when they want to choose such a career. They are faced with pressure by the parents, and they are pushed towards choosing some easy careers with no big challenges like education, geography, and history, away from the media and audiovisual sectors that might keep her away from her family and children. That is why women always pick up easy and light careers in order to be able to overcome all difficulties and challenges that she might be faced with in her work. There is another challenge that women are exposed to in the media institutions. If, for example, she's a media presenter, it's the wage gap between men and women in such a sector, and also granting her family-related shows, women and children-related shows, away from the political and important discussion or even economic discussion programs. So there is a big stereotyping work done against women. Unfortunately, we don't find female leaders heading such media institutions. Most leaders are men. We're not yet at that level. In the last parliament, we had a much higher percentage of women. Now we have only 15 female MPs. Previously, we used to have 20 MPs. So unfortunately, we're suffering from regression, clear regression. I tried to give you an idea about what's happening in Jordan, stereotyping and gaps in both the political and media spheres in Jordan. Thank you very much. Shahid.
Pleasure to have you with us today. So same question goes to you. So in order to balance the portrayal of gender stereotypes in the audiovisual sector, we need more participation of youth and specifically women, and the call for better access to new technologies and raise the interest for this profession. So what do you think are the barriers, the socio-cultural barriers that young women encounter if they wish to follow a career in the audiovisual production sector?
Hello to everyone. It's my pleasure to be today with you with such distinguished speakers, and hoping that we will have a productive session. Coming back to your question, a different region, young women have different difficulties toward their aspiration to follow a career in audiovisual production in basis of the context of their country. Anyhow, there is a common denominator such as gender stereotypes. Young women which decide to follow a career within the audiovisual production sector often are prejudiced from the society about their decision, their path. They encounter a lack of support from their families and sexism within the sector. On the other part, women, which are already part of this sector, despite the mentioned problems, also face difficulties on balancing both family and career. The established gender roles also indicate woman participation most often in certain types of programs, such beauty programs, kitchen, etc. And from my opinion, this reinforces the existing gender roles. Meanwhile, we should not forget that the audiovisual production sector is part of the technology industry, which currently is more seen as a male sector, which indicates negatively the desire of young women to follow studies linked with this sector. And for example, from an OECD report, at 15 years old of age, on average, only 0.5% of young women wish to be part of the digital labor market, compared with 5% of boys. So to conclude, is more than clear that the barriers of young women within the audiovisual production sector are linked with the specific attributes, characteristics, or roles that the society indicates us day by day. And we should further work to address and to combat them with our persistence and example. Thank you.
Very interesting, Francesca. Thank you very much. Back to you, Shahid. ما هي في نظرك الاستراتيجيات?
In your opinion, what are the strategies or the visions that you could suggest to the decision makers, partners, public and private institutions in order to enable young men and women to participate more in the media, the marketing, the audiovisual and the communication sectors, with convictions that aim at fighting all stereotypes? Thank you. We cannot hear you. Unmute, please. Thank you, Amal, for this crucial question. One of the main things to speak about is the need to find a text that would criminalize all types and all forms of violence against women at the top, political violence and other forms of violence. At the same time, we need to empower and ensure trainings to the presenters, female presenters and anchors, in order to avoid stereotyping and highlight the role of female leaders who are able to take decisions. I believe that we need to seek a wider participation by women in general. Women must support each other and avoid sensitivities between women who are at the same institution as women and ladies in our media institutions. We must be supportive of each other. Actually, there must be an equal opportunity principle in the media institutions, and there must be an equal pay between men and women, because unfortunately women are perceived as if they're not in charge of the entire family, because in most families and Arab households the men is in charge. That is why the pay of women is much lower than the remuneration granted to men at the end of the month. So I believe those are the issues that must be addressed, and we must put intensive efforts by the civil society organizations, because unfortunately a lot of CSOs try to do some work, and we still didn't get to the point we want to support women. We need to intensify efforts. Media institutions must play a role, decision makers as well, and many other stakeholders that can support women in different fields. Thank you, Shahid.
Should be the strategies and visions that we need to propose to institutional partners, decision makers, public and private entities to empower youth and young women to enhance their participation in the media sector for production, directing, marketing, networking, and distributing to combat gender stereotypes. So, Francesca.
Thank you for the question. So coordinating policy action can help narrow this gap, and this requires to be undertaken concrete policy action to foster women's and girls' full participation and inclusion in the audiovisual sector, while at the same time addressing stereotypes and social norms that lead to discrimination against girls and women is needed. As well, a stronger cooperation across stakeholders to remove barriers to girls and women's full participation in the audiovisual production sector are also much needed. And concretely, I would like to mention 3 areas of intervention. Firstly, the education system, where the curricula schools should be more open and start to educate young people from the preliminary school. So from an early age, with concept of gender stereotypes, social norms, human rights, and schools should also start to work as community center where parents and others might be positively influenced to support young women's career choices and to be part of the action which combat the mentioned social norms. Also, increasing youth participation in policymaking and in gender actions, which will indicate as well cooperation among different target groups and will combine action for the same vision. And here I would like to mention a good example, as is the Youth Beijing platform, which I see as a way to bring the national politics on local realities. And I also believe that a key driver on the mentioned situation will be by attracting young women to this field in the first place through dedicated schemes, economic programs. Having female role models does make a difference, and having young women and women which cooperate with each other to address this problem in local, regional, and national level makes an ever bigger difference.
Thank you very much, Francesca. So I'm taking a few questions from the audience, and I'll stay with you, Francesca, because you have mentioned the point where we need to attract young women to be active in the media sector as well. And the audience is asking if we should consider quotas, because quotas is always the elephant in the room when it comes to gender equality. Should we also consider quotas when it comes to having women take a place in the media space?
We have a good example of quotas in politics in Albania, which has been very productive in enhancing women participation in policy making. And for example, now we have a large number of ministers which are women, but on this concrete area, I do not believe that putting quota for the participation of women or young women on this sector will be resultative, because at the end of the day, it is something that should be indicated from the free will of the young women and the women. So we should change the mindset, and so the technology, the audiovisual production, not to be seems like a male sector, but like a sector which all female and males and might participate in equal form.
Interesting. Thank you, Francesca. Question to you, Shahad, from the audience. لأي مدى لابد أنه المرأة هي بذاتها تغير؟
To what extent should women themselves change in the way they portray themselves, the way they speak, and how they are represented, in order to change the stereotypes when it comes to the gender perspective? That's a very important question by the audience. The social media or the platforms that are open to female presenters. Unfortunately, what we notice is that the content that we find in such platforms mainly focuses on the images, the beauty, the physical appearance, and the way she's dressed, not really the way she thinks or reflects, in order to convey the useful and meaningful messages, because she must have influence over the people who view her show, probably teenagers, young men and women. So she must be influential. She must properly influence others and show that she can provide a different content, or provide a content that would meet the needs of the public. If she's an influencer on the platforms and a presenter at the same time, this is very important. She must be fully aware and conscious in order to present a decent content that doesn't stereotype her role in the media. Thank you, Shahid.
One quick minute to you, Francesca. Quick recommendations, bullet points.
Okay, it's a little bit difficult to summarize the most important views when we speak about gender stereotypes, and we share such a lot important inputs. Anyhow, what I cannot stop to mention again and again is the need of cooperation and coordination between policies, programs, and action that already exist, and also between different level of policies from regional to national and from national to local realities. The necessity to start the education from an early age about the diversity, about the human rights, the gender stereotypes, and the diversity. Also, increasing the pressure to policymaker to implement the existing policies for women participation in economy, politics, media, etc., and increasing youth participation in policy making and a real action of gender equality. Also, being persistent on combating gender stereotypes and social norms and cooperating between each other, and why not creating a regional platform which address the same problems that women and young women face within the region. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Francesca. شاهد لو يمكن تلخص.
Shahid, in a nutshell, can you give us a summary of a set of recommendations and suggestions, please? Yes, Amal. We can use lobbying and exerting pressure when it comes to all legislations and the policies that are not fair towards women. We must have a legal text that criminalizes all the types and forms of violence. That's number one. Number two, to empower female and male presenters in the media sector to highlight the role of female leaders to avoid stereotyping and avoid using certain expressions and terms that must show to the viewer that ladies are not able to make decisions or are different from men. So it is very important to empower the TV and media presenters. A recommendation to women themselves: they must be confident and have trust in themselves as to playing an influential and important role in the society. That's it. Thank you very much, Amal.
Followers for your online participation, and we close now this third and last session, the need to enhance the media's potential for women's empowerment in the audiovisual sector, identify barriers and propose recommendations. And with this, I give the floor to Mr. Thomas Volk, Director of the Regional Program, Political Dialogue South Mediterranean of Konrad Adenauer Stiftung, to close officially this interactive side of the event, the role of youth in combating gender stereotypes in the audiovisual sector. To you, Thomas.
Thank you, Amel, dear Ambassador Marisa Farrugia, dear participants and followers. On behalf of the Regional Program Political Dialogue South Mediterranean of the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung, I would like to thank all speakers, moderators, and of course the translators, as well as the UfM, for making this event happening today. As a regional program political dialogue, we are not only working on the promotion of democracy and economic development in the South Med region, but women empowerment was, is, and will remain a very important part of our regional work. We just recently organized our yearly conference, the Mediterranean Women Digital Summit, to discuss also challenges and opportunities of the digital sphere for female leaders in the region. And we did discuss some of the topics that were also mentioned in this side event just now. It was very inspiring to follow the different opinions and contributions. And as Julia Hahn mentioned, I think very rightly, stereotypes are simplifying. And it is our common endeavor and responsibility to stand against these simple stereotypes and to come up with, let's say, a more gender-balanced approach also in the audiovisual. But the, let's say, common responsibility we all have goes beyond the stereotypes in the audiovisual. It is a constant and ongoing responsibility for all parts of the society to stand for more equality between men and women, for a more gender-balanced approach to topics and discussions, and for a more diversified society in the South Med region, but also in other parts of the world. And as a German political foundation, we will continue to promote stronger involvement of women in leadership positions in the political and economic sphere. It cannot be satisfying to have only a female participation in parliaments in the MENA region of 18%. It can also not be satisfying to have only 13 to 15% of women owning or managing businesses in the MENA region compared to 31 to 38% worldwide. We must encourage and we must enable women to become more involved. And this is why we will continue our work when it comes to women empowerment projects in the region. And I want to underline very personally that it is also a responsibility for men to stand up for women's rights and for a more gender-balanced approach to discussions in the region and in the world. And with this note, I want to thank you all and wish you very great success with all your projects. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Francesca. Thank you, Shahad. Thank you, Thomas. It was great to have you in this session.
Thank you all. Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Amal. Thank you. Thanks to all the participants. Merci beaucoup, Insa. Merci, Séverine. C'était vraiment très bien. I think that Marisa could say one word to all the participants.
I would like to thank you all.